Possible fight of the night contender coming up this weekend. We have top 10 ranked flyweights battling it out. It's the Undertaker, David Dvorak, representing Czech Republic, taking on Brazil's Matheus Nicolau. And for Nicolau, he's one of those guys that you went, if we're doing the flyweight purge, are we really getting rid of Nicolau? Like, is he really the guy that we want to get rid of? And for him, I mean, he was able to get some wins outside of the promotion. He comes back into the UFC. He beats the former Rising champ in Manon, albeit by split decision. It was a close fight. We can get into it later. But his last time out, he had another close enough fight against Tim Elliott. It was a lot of fun. There was a lot of fun in it. He's taking on David Dvorak that is undefeated in his last number of fights. And it's a tidy little win streak that he brings into this one, especially when you consider the guys that he's beaten in the UFC. And I know his last time out, it was only Juan Camilo Ronderos on incredibly short notice. But a win over Bruno Silva, a win over Jordan Espinoza, and then the finish over Ronderos where he kind of had his way in it.
I would hope so, though.
He was just, like, swinging his right hand out there, and Ronderos kind of, like, missed a step. Dvorak just big brothered him, took his back, and just choked him out. And Ronderos wasn't even fighting the arm. Like, he was just kind of, like, hanging out. Looked like he was all good. And then the submission was good. But really, when we look at David Dvorak and we consider his performances that he had outside of the UFC with Octagon, with the other promotions, and we consider the guy inside of the UFC, no major changes, still the same guy, still going to implement his grappling, still going to implement a really fan-friendly type of striking style, doesn't take a ton of damage, and the big thing that we saw out of Dvorak, especially in the Jordan Espinoza fight, he made him switch stances with the amount of leg kicks and the thunder that he threw on those leg kicks. You love to see that, especially in this division.
Oh, of course. Now, the dangerous thing about standing at kicking range with someone like Matheus Nicolau, though, is that, A, he also has phenomenal leg kicks himself, but Nicolau has a really unique way of throwing his punches. He's got this looping, like, way that he throws them. It's almost like a Nate Diaz-esque shot, where it's not a straight, it's not a hook, it's sort of a slapping straight, if you will, and it really catches a lot of guys off guard because he is so big for this weight class. But the thing about Dvorak, and I agree with everything you said, he has the skills, he just hasn't had the chance to showcase it against top-tier UFC talent yet, and that's why I think this fight is so fun, because if you just take the talent that is Dvorak, and you don't really take into account his level of competition up until this point, you're pretty excited about the prospect we have. Well, prospect, he's under 30, so we can still hit him with that moniker, I guess. With Nicolau, it's weird because he's been around for a while now. Like you said, this is his second run in the UFC. He was an exciting top 15 guy for a little while, but the weird thing about Nicolau is that he has good but not great cardio. He has good but not great punching power. It just feels like he lacks an X factor. And yes, I would say he has above average punching power for this weight class, without a doubt, but it's not so high to the level of like a Devison Figueiredo or a Pantoja, to where every time they land on your opponent, you genuinely think they could put him out. With Nicolau, he does rely a little bit more on his combinations, and that'll be very interesting to see in this fight, because with Dvorak, he loves to pressure guys backwards. He really does like to keep his hands high for someone who wrestles a lot, which is interesting because, like you had said earlier with the kickboxer leaving their hands high.
Denis Tiuliulin.
Thank you. With Denis Tiuliulin, Dvorak will keep his hands high, but it's in a very intelligent manner. He's someone who's very quick with his own takedown entries, so he can shoot in very fast, so it's not really a detriment to him at all or a weakness. I should look at that as a big strength for David Dvorak, but again, I worry about him at the long range in this fight, because for as good as he is, and he's got great ground and pound, we haven't even talked, his elbows on the ground are disgusting. He's got them from half guard, full guard, just he's really, really good, especially with his ground and pound. But Nicolau is never really in a set position, especially on the mat. He's got a great defensive guillotine, but he can get held down sometimes, and I do think Dvorak will have a lot of success if he does decide to wrestle early, because with Nicolau, really that was the story on him in his first UFC tenure. It was, you don't want to strike with this guy, you really just want to try to take him down. But the weird thing, and I keep on going back to this and I'll hand it back off, Nicolau doesn't have the best chin for a big power puncher, and it's weird because in this division, there's not a ton of one-punch knockout artists by any means. I know, talk about Figueiredo, talk about Pantoja, but I would say those are pretty much the only guys. Nicolau, he hasn't been knocked out cold a lot in his career, but he gets dropped or at least wobbled in every single fight he has ever been in, and that really does worry me against someone like Dvorak, who, if he wobbles you early, that avalanche is just going to keep on coming and coming and coming.
And it's really weird when you consider this fight at flyweight and the featherweight fight that kicks off this card. Luis Saldaña taking on Bruno Souza, because Souza has great cardio, Saldaña doesn't necessarily, and Saldaña can really give away the later stages of a fight. When you look at it for Matheus Nicolau, his cardio's not that bad. He does get hit, but the trouble that I have, he's in the same boat as Saldaña. Saldaña arguably, very arguably, lost his UFC debut. It's a win on his record, and then his last time out, he loses to Austin Lingo. For Matheus Nicolau, he fights Manel Kopp, and 20 all 22. Everybody on MMA Decision scored at 29-28 for Manel Kopp. But for Matheus Nicolau, did he win the first round? Did he win the third round? And then you look at his last fight against Tim Elliott, and the thing that we know, he's able to get the win there because he loses the first round, and he rallies in round 2 and round 3. So in this fight against David Dvorak, I don't necessarily think we're going to get a finish in this one. I don't. I think it's going to just be a great fight, one that everybody can get excited about. But again, it's really going to come down to who can be the more active guy in the cage and who can really, really implement their footwork. Because if you look at it, David Dvorak's always doing something. He's always moving out of the way. He's always doing something. It's not wasted movement, though. And for Nicolau, good L-step, good in and out. Like, that really is where his bread gets buttered. So when I do consider this fight, you look at the odds. Not surprisingly, they actually open at par. Dvorak, slight favorite right now, minus 138 on best fight odds. Nicolau somewhere around a plus 113. We have a look over on Topology. The votes are a surprise to us, there to you. And I don't even know where to go with this one. I'm going to say 60% over under Dvorak.
I was about to say, I'm going to say over.
So it is over 921 total votes, actually. 79% Dvorak, 83% by decision for the 21% that have Nicolau, 74% by decision. And I mean, I look at this one, Dvorak doesn't have as much UFC experience. We know that. Nicolau had the 2 different stints. Dvorak is the more active fighter by the numbers, but again, level of competition, not quite there. And you consider it. The last guy that he fought, Juan Camilo Ronderos, came in on a day's notice and missed weight for that fight and was a 4-0 fighter taking on a man. A man. Like Dvorak, you said, like he's a prospect, but again, he's under 30, he's got 23 fights. He's a man. You don't give 4-0 guys men in the octagon. So Matt, when I look at this fight, again, line close, it is a good fight. What do you say?
Here's the thing. I know we've set this up as, if Dvorak could just get this to the ground, he's going to have a lot of success. And I think that's true. I genuinely think he's going to eat a lot of damage, though, before he gets it to the ground. Because that's the kind of striker Nicolau is. And maybe we haven't set it up all that well for Nicolau, because he can. When he puts his combinations together, it's a really, really hard just flurry to stop. And for Dvorak, he's going to need his wrestling to stop the forward momentum of Nicolau. So I think if he does get the takedown, he'll have a ton of success. But if Nicolau could just defend the first 2 or 3 and force Dvorak to be a striker, I do think Nicolau could find himself winning this fight, although the official prediction will be David Dvorak. I do think he will be able to get it down to the mat, and if he can just grapple with Nicolau a lot early on, really wear on him, I think the gas tank of Nicolau is a big enough issue for him to where if the fight's close early on, Dvorak can start to separate himself as it goes on.
And Nicolau, for what it is worth in that UFC tenure, 92% takedown defense. Elliott was able to get one his last fight out. Nicolau was able to get one. He is really long, and he has great defensive hips. He has really, really good clinch control, and so does Dvorak. When I look at this one, Nicolau, is he the harder puncher? More than likely so. Again, not a lot of knockout wins in the UFC, a lot more outside of it. But again, Douglas Silva de Andrade's in that category.
Nicolau bangs, though.
You get up for his fights, just like you do for Nicolau's. I like the activity out of Dvorak. I like the fact that he's always going for something. He's always forcing a clinch. It's always on his terms, or at least it has been in 20 of his 23 fights. So really, when you go back through, you do the tape study. For me, I have Dvorak in this one, but it is such a good fight. And listen, I wouldn't be surprised if Brazil's Nicolau was able to pull out the win. This is one of my favorite fights coming up this weekend. So let us know down below in the comments section who you have in this fight. Both of us going with Czech Republic's own David Dvorak to get the win. Big time card coming up. Joanne Wood taking on Alexa Grasso in the co-main event. Curtis Blaydes taking on Chris Daukaus. You're not going to want to miss it. Just keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say,
let's get into it.